All right. Hey, it's Trey Griggs with Obsidian Wisdom on walking you to another Retirement Readiness Thursday. Today, we are going to take a case study and we're going to see if you can retire at 60 with $1 million that's set aside in retirement. I look forward to the time. These case studies are a lot of fun. I'll walk you through the information that I normally look at for you to be able to make this decision. Today, we have John and Lisa. They're in their mid 50s. They saved $1 million, and their dream is to retire at 60 and they want to enjoy the travel. I think they had like pottery as well, and a little bit of golf that was mixed in there, but they didn't want to be worrying about the money because there are numbers that show, yes, that the majority of people are retiring broke, which is normally we consider that less than 5,000. That's the way the studies normally go. But there's equally enough people that have the regret of not spending enough in retirement because they weren't sure either way, where you're like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to run out of money. So you were uncomfortable spending your money. And so sometimes it's a mental shift where you go from saving to spending. And so we want to be able to see, can we turn the savings into a lifestyle? Can we turn the savings into a healthcare plan? Can we turn the savings to combat inflation and possibly living a lot longer than we expected, where we just over the average? And so today what we'll do is there'll be four main things that I'll point out to you when we go through building such a retirement plan. Number one is we'll see if we can build the bridge from retiring at 60 and Medicare at 65. And the reason that that ends up being important is because if you retire early, then you have to figure out how you're going to take care of your health care. Most of us, our health care is tied to our work. And if our health care is tied to the work that we're doing, we got to figure out a way to cover the healthcare expenses. Now, I will definitely tell you a couple of my own personal experiences, but from a financial standpoint, financial planning, we'll cover that today. Number two is we'll talk about when you want to be able to do Roth conversions to reduce future taxes. Number three, we'll talk about what withdrawal order helps your money to last the longest, and then how you can see what truly makes sure we're ready for retirement. And those will be the four main things that we'll go over today to ensure that we're good to go. It says we're having trouble with the LinkedIn one, so hopefully that one we're able to get it squared away. If not, then I will simply have to I'll have to go back in there and I'll upload it later. But it was saying that we're having a little bit of a problem with the LinkedIn one. Let me see what we're able to do, and we can see if we can fix the LinkedIn. And then if not, it just is what it is, right? That's how technology is sometimes. As much as we add on, it seems that the biggest benefit I have found is when it comes to the high school and the college kids getting their papers written by AI. The rest of us, it's a work in progress, we'll say. And so we'll be able to keep going from there. All right, so what I'll do is let's go ahead and get started. I will share my screen with you and we will go through a case study. And then we'll see what type of things we'll normally look at when we're building a retirement plan. So I'll go ahead and share that. I'll add it to the stage. There you go. And so you can see that we were able to put a plan together where we had an 87% probability of success. A very fancy way of saying we run these things called Monte Carlo simulations, another fancy jargon. It just means that we ran 1,000 of different scenarios. And based on these 1,000 scenarios, 870 times it worked out fine for us, 87% of the time. If you're wondering, well, what is a good number to go for? I normally shoot for 80%. I've seen some go as low as like 75. And the reason is because it varies, right? Some of them were saying, hey, what if the stock market has like a crazy 50% loss? What if inflation goes double digits, right? Like there's certain things in the simulation that are less likely to happen. Naturally, we already have baked into the cake someone living this current plan is projected to go out to 90 years of age. And I think the average currently in the United States is like 77. And so we're already building in a lot of risk protection, or you may have heard Warren Buffett's called margin of safety. It's just how we limit the risk. And so we don't want to be limiting all the risk where we're like, hey, I need to have enough money to live to 150, but we do try to find ways to adjust it. So 80% is normally going to be a good number. This one's at 87, and we'll go through exactly how we were able to come up with that. And then if you have any questions along the way, I'm definitely here to be able to answer them. And I'll check in periodically to make sure that I can answer those questions for you. So first and foremost, let's go through just the high level of the case study. So let's go through the information. And so normally we'll start off with your net worth. So your net worth, you see is 712,000, $25,000 in their checking account, $15,000 in credit cards, have $1 million that's set aside in their investments. You have 50,000 each inside of their separate Roths. We have 600K in John's 401k, 250K in Lisa's 401k, and then they have about $50,000 in taxable investments. So that's just your traditional brokerage account. So when I say taxable, it just means that the money has already gone into your checking account, and then you invested it in stocks or real estate or business, right? Like that's the idea of a taxable investment. If you leave it in there for a year and a day, it comes out as capital gains tax, which is generally very favorable versus ordinary income tax. But if it's less than that, it's normally just taxed again at ordinary income, which means Uncle Sam taxed it twice. So ordinary income. So we normally want to make sure that we're preparing for long-term strategies. It's not in the scope of this particular plan, but there are so many things that we can do from a tax perspective with like tax loss harvesting and other strategies to ensure that you're able to limit some of those losses and the taxes that we pay on them. And then we had the loan. So it was a mortgage in their car. I believe the mortgage had, like 280 left and $18,000 left on Lisa's car. The goals that we had, both want to retire at 60, as we just mentioned. Our monthly retirement expenses are supposed to be decreasing to about $66,000 every single month. And so that is where we believe our retirement lifestyle is going to have set for us. We do have things in here like long-term care, which, as we mentioned, on average, for people 65 and older, you'll have at least one long-term care episode. Normally, they last on average kind of on and off, whether you have to go see a physical therapist or you have to have some sort of a treatment, that it's about 3 years over the length of your retirement. Not 3 years altogether, but just when you add them all up, it's maybe a month here, 3 months there, 6 months here. As a result, it normally ends up being on average about $50,000 every single year. So you normally have to have something around like $150,000, $200,000 set aside. Or if you want to have long-term care insurance, normally we look at that probably in your mid 40s to like somewhere between like 45 to 55, right? High level. Naturally, we have to get approved for anything that has to do with health insurance or life insurance or long-term care insurance. But if you get approved, it normally is a good thing to look into right around that 50 years of age. If you wait until you're in your 60s, more times than not, it's a huge premium increase. And sometimes it doesn't even make sense to take care of it then, because the life insurance companies know what the rest of us know, is that 70% of people, 7 out of 10 people over the age of 65 will have at least one long-term care episode. So we left it with the last 2 years in their plan. And so we're saying, hey, look, at 89 and 90, let's just say that something was to happen. Would we be okay? So that's why we just do the last 2 years. We can definitely take it out. But when it comes to long-term care, you're either going to go into like a nursing home, an assisted living facility, or you're going to have the nurse come visit you at your home and help you out. And the nurse can help you do a variety of things. And so normally we look at that, and I normally will at least mention it's worth considering the fact that if you're married, that because the wife normally outlives the husband, just having a small plan for her so someone can help her out, like when the husband is gone, that's normally at least something to consider. And so those are normally going to be the things that we look at. We leave it in there just as far as risk protection, and then we could take it out if we have a great family history and we just have a network and we're not worried at all. So John's car is currently paid off. That's why only Lisa's SUV was in there. And so John, in about 8 years, we plan on getting a car. And so the way that would work is we would just go ahead and say, how about we put $5,000 aside for a car every single year for 8 years? What would that look like? And then we increase it with inflation. So if the car is $40,000 now, if we increase with inflation, we at least cover that idea. Because the way inflation normally works is the amount something will cost basically doubles every 20 years. So if a lifestyle costs you right now $100,000, that means in 20 years it would cost you $200,000 to live that same lifestyle. And we've just gone through some inflation. So you already know that the price of like eggs and gas and all these different things, that yes, it is a real thing that we do want to consider in our retirement plan. Next, we had the traveling. So we're talking about traveling. They're in Florida, so they were talking about going to places that snow. They're like, I don't want to go to a beach place because I already live in Florida. So we were talking about a ski resort in Colorado, spending like a week there. We're talking about traveling in other places where the climate is a little bit different. And that looked like about $10,000 a year, whether they take one trip or two trips or or 4 trips. That's the way that we calculate it. It's like, how much would it be each year? And we said, all right, so we'll be able to cover that amount, increases with general inflation, and then we'll go from there as far as the trips and things like that. We had pottery classes that was about $750 a year. I think it was like $50 a class, and we're going to go once a month or somewhere around there. And then the golf, we weren't getting a golf membership. We were just going to go golfing. And so the way the golf worked out was about $2,500 a month. So that's what the goals were for their retirement. As far as their income, we make about $150,000 combined. And then as far as savings, they're currently placing 15% of their salary into their 401k, and they're not placing anything in the taxable accounts currently. And then they put $7,000 a year into their Roth. So a pretty nice strategy that they already have in place. When you look at the expenses, we have the 7,000, or we have 6,000 here, but then that doesn't include the other ones that were added here. So you add them together. So the car payments, the mortgage, and things like that. So they're about $8,000 a month is currently where their expenses are. And then we're adding the healthcare, because we're basically saying, well, if I retire at 60, how am I going to pay for my health insurance before I get to 65? And so the stats are out there. It says that the number one demographic of people in the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, whichever one you refer to it as, that the number one demographic is people that are basically like 50 to 64, like right underneath there. That is the number one demographic of people that are using the Affordable Care Act, and that's the reason why. Whether you qualify and have to pay for it on your own every single month, or whether you have some of the premiums paid for where there's some subsidies that are available, whatever that looks like, the number one demographic is people that are not old enough for Medicare, but they've already decided to retire. And so that's where we'll look at that. Now, there are other options. You can go Cobra, but Cobra is pretty expensive to maintain it, where the business isn't paying the half. So normally the way your health insurance works, you pay half and the business pays half, generally speaking. And so if you have Cobra where you quit the job, you get the option to pay the entire amount. And by law, they can't go over maybe 105% of what the premium used to be. But it is sticker shock where you're like, hey, how could that possibly be half, Dre? I'm already paying $400 from each paycheck. And I'm like, I know, but that is half. So it would double to $800, $1,000 from each of your paychecks to maintain that one, which is why the number one demographic ends up being people that are just underneath Medicare. They end up going on the Affordable Care Act. And so it's just something you definitely want to at least consider and think about from the expenses perspective. And that is going to be one of the things that we'll talk about. So, and then let's go through the plan. All right. So then what you'll do is you take that information, and then it gives you your balance sheet. And your balance sheet is just as we saw. You have $1 million invested. You have $25,000 in the bank. You have your mortgage and your credit cards, and then you have the other debt, which was the auto loan. You add these, subtract these, that gives you the $712,000. They're currently their investment allocation is about a balance, about half in stocks, half in bonds. Probably depending on what your risk tolerance is, that's roughly around where you'd want to be. You have the room to go up to maybe a 60% in stocks and 40% in bonds, but it's okay. And so we look at the portfolio, you can see that they have most of it. 85% of it is tax deferred. And one of the strategies that we love to implement, of course, is like, how do we decrease the amount that goes to Uncle Sam in taxes? The issue with having 85% of your money in your 401k is that's all going to be taxed as ordinary income as soon as it comes out. You also have required minimum distributions, where once you reach 73 years, there's a little chart, and then you take your age and divide it by how much you have, and it tells you how much you have to take out every single year. Otherwise, you're going to have this penalty. And the penalty, I believe they lowered it. It used to be 50%. It's like 25% now. But whatever you're supposed to take out, 25% of that would be your penalty. And none of us want to be penalized, because it's just, you work so hard, you earn the money, you grew it, and to just have Uncle Sam take it in a penalty, that just doesn't sound like fun to me. But it is definitely something I see very often. And so when we have a little bit of time, we'll go through some of the strategies to help us to be able to decrease that. And so we'll go through a handful of those choices. And I will show you the first thing that we did based off of their risk tolerance. We definitely had a little bit of room to be a little bit more aggressive, not a lot more aggressive, but a little bit more. I'll zoom in so you can see it a little bit easier. So as we mentioned, they already pretty much had like a balanced approach. We were looking to be somewhere closer to the 60-40. All you're seeing on the screen is what we call a model portfolio. It is a very, very fancy way of simply saying that this is a possible way to allocate the funds. We don't have to allocate this way. For most people that don't need all the extra, fluff and the extra stuff, we normally can stick with just US domestic stocks. The US stock market is still one of the largest ones. You still have the majority of the most phenomenal companies in the whole world, but there is growth and value available internationally. And so that's why, depending on someone's risk tolerance, while we at least consider it, but it's not something that you have to do. And so we can allocate it anyway and have the 60-40, whatever we want to focus on. We just want to make sure we're having roughly a certain percentage of our growth and then the protection at the same time. And so from there, what you'll see is when you just went through the information, just straight through the information, they had a 63% chance of success, right? Just based off of what they were doing, 15% in their 401k for each of them, the $7,000 inside of their Roth, they had a 63% chance going off of that. And then everything kind of stayed the exact same. And so we'll go through a handful of the changes that we made, and then you'll be able to see it from there. And so what you will see, the blue is some of the changes we made. So there's a couple of ways that we could have done it. And it was easier for us to just say, well, how about what we do is we decrease the 401k contributions just down to 10%. A lot of times we'll decrease it all the way to just what the match is. Their match was 4%. Normally that is very common. We'll just go down to whatever the match is, get the 100% free return, and then we start shifting a lot more of the assets towards after-tax investments if we're not needing the tax deduction today. Because we want to have as much flexibility as we can in retirement. We want to be able to take that money and make the different strategic purchases that maybe we need to make leading up to retirement. Because if you are, depending on right, there's a couple of strategies you can use, but ideally we don't want to have all of our money stuck in where it's going to be taxed as ordinary income tax. But this one, we had lowered it just a little bit. So we took off 5%, and then we took that exact amount, which was $10,000. That was basically that was about around 10% of their salary. And then we placed that in the taxable investments. And so what we're able to do from there is we said, all right, if we take off 10%, you have 150, or we take off 5% for each of you, so it's 10% total. We got 150,000, that's 15,000. Let's add the additional 5,000 as kind of like your cushion / paying off some of the debt a little bit quicker. And then we can have the other 10,000 that we just move into tax, after tax accounts, right? And so we said, this is going to be a good approach, a nice strategy that we can implement. And so that's what we said, all right, that's good. You're actually freeing up cash flow, an extra $5,000 a year, at least in my pocket, where I can do something with. And then we're still investing, so we're not lowering it too much. And that was the decision we made. We increased the allocation to moderate, a very small adjustment from the balance, but it was definitely going to be something that I believe that would let our money work, give us a few more options. As far as retirement, we did the full retirement age of 67, which was also something that we would need to then account for from the income perspective. Because if you take your retirement right at 60 or your Social Security at 62, well, then that's just another income stream. So we can adjust some of the other strategies as well. But for them, it worked as far as the full retirement age and just all the other factors that go in, like life expectancy, health, and different things. That was the one that worked best for them. Now, for you, it would be different. You maybe start at 62, maybe start a little bit later, but it worked for them to do the full retirement age. As far as the tax strategy, where we're able to create a significant amount of the savings, I'm going to show that to you. And then their overall spending, we changed it to a retirement spending smile. And all the retirement spending smile is basically saying that we don't just spend the same amount every single year, increasing with inflation. That as we live, that at some point we're going to say, you know what, I enjoyed that. Like I did some cool things. That was a lot of fun. I think I'm ready to chill out, maybe just a little bit, right? Like I'm not trying to walk it all the way back, but I think I just want to chill out a little bit more. And so let me show you what that would look like. And so what you're seeing on your screen is an example of the retirement spending smile. And so the way it goes is that early in our retirement years, we end up spending a lot more. We're traveling, we're doing all the trips, we're experiencing life, we're going golfing, we're doing the pottery, doing everything. Normally around mid-retirement, so maybe like 10 years in, we sort of were like, yeah, you know what? I enjoy golfing. I don't want to golf as much. I'm still going to golf, but not as much. I enjoy traveling, but I don't like getting stuck in the airport. So I'm going to travel a little bit less. And you'll see that the overall, we just start spending a little bit less. That is very common in most people. And then what ends up happening later in the years is we normally have increased healthcare expenses. And so then you see the smile, it starts to curve back up where we're spending more in our later years, not as much on the traveling in the hobbies, but a little bit more on healthcare. And so that ends up being a much more reasonable assumption versus the other one is basically it's just exponentially going up. That I spent $10,000 on trips, and then with inflation, that makes the trip 10,300 next year. So I'm just going to assume that I'm going to spend that and just keep going up, and that's less likely for most of us. And because that is less likely, what we end up ultimately deciding to do is we say, all right, well, based off of that, I'm going to be able to adjust how much my spending is. I can save some of the money in the middle years. I can do things locally. And that's what ends up happening for most of us. So that was why we made that ultimate change. And then let's talk about the taxes, which ends up being the big consideration whenever you're retiring. Because Uncle Sam is going to be taking the money, so we don't want Uncle Sam taking more than what he has to. All right. So in this particular plan, the way that we ended up doing the adjustments, you can see that the adjustments ended up generating 1.6 million more in assets that were left at the end of their plan. And that is kind of the compounding effect of just simply having required minimum distributions. They get larger and larger as you get later and later into retirement. And then, as we just mentioned, if I have a retirement spending smile, I don't even really want to spend that money. Like I wasn't going to spend the money if left up to me. And that's where you end up seeing those large amount of savings, because over a period of years, if you would not have taken the money out, because whatever your lifestyle was, we were able to afford it, but you had to, well, that decreases how much money you have later on for the healthcare expenses when you actually would want to spend it. And so what we ended up being able to do is, because we took the money out of the pre-tax accounts with those required minimum distributions being taxed as ordinary income, and we started moving the money to after-tax investments being taxed as capital gains, that means you keep more of your money in your pocket, which who wouldn't want more money in their pocket? And then you end up not having to spend it either. So that's how you get that 1.6 million. They were able to pay estimated 175,000 less in taxes, and then they were able to withdraw about $700,000 less. So you say, all right, what did you end up doing? I'm glad you asked. What we ended up doing is we took the allocation. So we put the allocation of the money goes in the tax-free accounts first, taxable accounts second, and then tax-deferred accounts third. So basically what we're saying is if we wanted to put $20,000 a year into our retirement accounts, we would max out all of our tax-free accounts first. So we'd max out whatever the Roth allows us to. And then we would max out whatever we can put into our brokerage accounts and our other after-tax investments. And then if there's anything left, we put that inside of our tax-deferred accounts. And what that ends up doing is then when we end up going through the process of withdrawing the money and removing it from the tax-deferred accounts, what we ended up doing is anytime our ordinary income tax bracket was above 10%, right, was nothing too crazy, or below 10%, we would fill up the bracket. And I'm going to see if I can show you what that will look like. All right. And so all we're basically saying is if this is the 10% bracket down here at the blue, a very small little line, anytime you have the green, that is when we go through and we do Roth conversions. So you can see right when we retired at 60, our income went down a decent amount. Then we started Social Security, and then you started taking out your investments. These lower years, we're able to do those Roth conversions. And so you can choose the brackets really, as far as the adjustments, you really could do it at any point in time. You could say, hey, anytime I'm over 12%. So you'd fill it up to the green line. And you would do a Roth conversion anytime you're below that green line, which is a 12% taxable income. Anytime you're below that, you would do a Roth conversion of that entire amount. And you really could do that with any of them. But we weren't trying to give them a lot of the extra taxes early on because we were trying to make sure that we stayed within a certain bracket when we were going to activate the Medicare, because Medicare, they look at how much you spent in those called look back years. And so you do want to be mindful of just how much you're spending. And so that's why we ended up doing it that way. And you can see that ended up giving them an extra 1.6 million in their investable accounts, which then is the largest reason why we're able to go from a 63% probability of success to an 87% probability of success. And once you have that option, you can then start saying, all right, I can exhale. I'm able to spend the money. I comfortably know that I'm okay. And you have basically the number one thing that we're all seeking. It's not, the plan has less to do with spending the money, which obviously spending money is a part of it. The plan has a lot more to do with peace of mind. Just knowing that I can do it is basically the number one thing that each of us are trying to figure out. Like, what does my retirement look like? Can I afford to just kind of live my life, or do I always have to be thinking strategically as far as like, how am I going to be able to do this? Is it okay? And so normally you'll go through this process. And so basically what we do is you normally would go through the data gathering. So where are we at now? How is the plan looking? We then talk about any of the obstacles. So if you're going to retire before 65, then that automatically means Medicare is something that we have to be able to bridge you towards. If you wanted to wait to take Social Security, then we got to bridge the income gap in those years as well. Whatever that looks like, those are where we list the obstacles. And then we start saying, well, what strategies help us to accomplish that? That's where we put the plan in place. So we did the Roth conversion. We managed the withdrawal order, and then we looked at the tax impact. And then we get the outcome. Are we on track? Do we need to make more adjustments? Now that we're on track, how can we adjust our plan to make sure it's working for us? Now, if you are someone who is like, hey, you know what? I kind of like that, Dre. I think that would be kind of cool. If you are someone who would like to, I'm actually starting something new where I can do this with you. And so what we'll do is every single Wednesday, I'm going to put together like a workshop, and you can have access to the exact same program that you just saw me using, which is through Right Capital. You'll be able to place your information in there. I'll walk you through it. We'll set up the plan, and we'll go through what the high level approaches would be. And then, of course, you'll have an offer at the end if you want to be able to work one-on-one with me. But all you have to do, go to obsidianwisdom.com. So you go to obsidianwisdom.com, and then you click on, I want a worry-free retirement income. And then what it will do is it's going to open it up, and then you can simply sign up for free. And it is through Zoom. So I think my limit is like 100 people. So it's going to be the limited to 100 people each week. Free workshop. You have access. You'll go through the plan. You'll create it. You'll have a better idea of the number. Do I need to make any adjustments? Am I okay? Right? If you're okay, then go on, right? Have a good time in retirement. If you need some expert help, then of course you have that option as well. But that is going to be something new that we will start. I haven't even named it yet, but every single Wednesday from like 5:30 to 6:30, we'll go through. I'll give you the strategies that you'll need, and then we'll talk about why having wisdom in your plan is going to help you achieve all of the goals. And so then that's really all you ultimately end up having to do. And so you go to Obsidian Wisdom, you click on the I want to worry-free retirement. From there, it brings you to this page. You then sign up, right? So I already have mine, right? j@obsidianwisdom.com. You sign up. It's then going to take you to the, right? Let's see if it was submitted for me. It's then going to take you to the very next page. From there, you'll be able to click the registration link. You'll be able to sign up for which day you want to go to the live. Say, right, so it'll take you here. You'll be able to sign up for which day you want to go to the live. And then from there, you'll come down and you'll be able to get access to the program exactly as I am using it. It won't but it'll give you the login ability for you to be able to see it. So for me, I'm already logged in. So that's why it said, hey, you're already logged in, go to your dashboard. But for you, you would be able to see, set up the account, set up a username, place the information in there, and then you'd be able to go through that as well. All right, so I think it's a shame that I don't think it ended up working for us, but it is what it is. So I think we had the problem on the LinkedIn. So on the LinkedIn, I apologize for it not working for you, but that's how technology is sometimes, right? It just is what it is. As always, right, I'm Dre Griggs with Obsidian Wisdom. I look forward to meeting you, helping you, and I hope you have a great time. Until next time, stay safe and enjoy life.